Hi guys, welcome to episode 3 of Tackram Training Talks. My name's Natalie and I am Ramblings of a Riding Instructor. Today I want to talk to you about the dreaded C word, this word, canter. This word has a huge effect on many riders and it's not always a positive effect. Very regularly we'll be having a lesson, I'll be teaching, and the rider will have done all their walk work, they'll have done their trot work, maybe some lateral work, and things are going really well. They've got positional corrections, the horse is working well, and then all of a sudden I mention this word and things start to change. And for a lot of riders, what then tends to happen is whatever we've done before I mention this word, it seems to disappear, and all of a sudden they return to the rider they were at the beginning of the lesson. So they tend to lose any improvements that they've made in the moment that they start thinking about this word. So the negative changes start to come in, not even at the point of canter, but just at the point of the rider thinking about the word canter. Why do riders have this potential negative association with the canter, which starts at the thought of the canter? Well, let's think about how canter has shown up for you as a rider. Let's say we spend much more time in walk and trot while we're learning to ride. Canter is faster than the other paces, so perhaps you as a rider don't feel quite so comfortable going at a quicker speed. Maybe you've had an accident or an incident which has made you feel a little bit uncomfortable going quicker, or made you a little bit more of a nervous or anxious rider, which as the thought of canter comes up, brings up some association to something that's happened to you in the past. Perhaps the horse doesn't have the easiest canter, perhaps they're a little bit quick, perhaps they're unbalanced, perhaps they're difficult to sit into the saddle with in canter. And just as a side note to that, if the horse is in a hollow frame, then they're definitely going to be harder to sit to in the canter than a horse that's using himself correctly. And quite a high percentage of horses do work in a hollow frame. If a rider's position is not at the optimum balance point, if their cores are not in place as they should be and they're not stacked up correctly with the arms and legs in the right place, that's going to make canter feel a little bit vulnerable to them. And of course, we as riders and humans, we don't want to put ourselves into vulnerable situations where our mind tells us that we could get hurt. So for all these reasons, and I'm sure there are loads more, I'm sure you might have some that I haven't thought of, canter can become something that causes riders to become anxious even at the point of thinking about the word canter. The first thing we need to work on, if this is you as a rider, is changing your response to the word canter. First of all, we need to make sure that your position is as good as it can be so that you as a rider are balanced, are strong in your position and your aids are effective, and that you feel safe. So feeling safe is seriously underrated. If you are out of balance in the incorrect position, there's always going to be a little element of you feeling a bit perched on top of the horse and having to hold on or hang on with arms and legs. That in itself is a bit of a vulnerable feeling on the horse. Having an effective position and feeling safe because of that are two of the most important things in your riding. Really often I see riders who have moved up into the canter, perhaps they're not ready yet and it's just too soon for them. There's no rush to get the canter. I know we all feel like as we move up the paces that we're progressing, but if when you get up to canter it doesn't feel safe, you feel vulnerable, your position is not quite what it should be and it scares you, then you shouldn't be there. You should be getting these things ironed out at the walk and the trot, and then working towards canter with much more confidence. Also, I am giving you permission to not enjoy the canter if your experience of canter is that the pony gets too quick, they motorbike round their corners, they don't have a lot of brakes. That is not fun. Nobody would enjoy canter that way. And if that's your experience, perhaps it would be a really good idea to find a more balanced horse, either through a riding school or some other option, so that you can actually experience what a nice canter feels like. A horse motorbiking around the corner without any brakes, going too quickly, perhaps because they're struggling or they're unbalanced, is not the best way to start to change your opinion about the canter. After you've checked on your position, checked on some of the other more basic things that would allow you to have a better position in the canter, feel safer and be more effective as a rider. We then move up to how we get to the actual canter without that potential feeling of whatever it is, anxiety, nervousness, coming away from everything that you've just done, kind of forgetting about that and seeing the canter as a separate part of your ride. The way I do this, and I absolutely love this concept, going towards the almost canter. So for me, the almost canter is you are going to switch now your goal from just getting into canter to ensuring the steps before that to actually get your way into the canter are pleasant, are balanced. You decide when things happen. And we're not just winging it up into the canter with the goal of getting into canter and staying into canter for laps of the school. So by winging it, what I mean is, this is also really common. Riders decide they're going to canter in a specific place in the school, a corner, and they do anything they can at that place to make the canter happen. Usually this is at great detriment to horse and rider balance, horse and rider communication, and horse and rider happiness. So what tends to happen is they go towards the corner. Perhaps they haven't prepped enough. The horse starts to rush. In the trot, the rider bounces more, the horse hollows more, the rider gets more left behind the movement. And then there's just this element of kicking on to hopefully get the horse to find his way up into the canter. But as the rider uses their leg to go forward into canter, the horse bumps forward, and then the rider topples back very fractionally, and then there's a backward action down the reins. So the horse starts to go perhaps, the rider bumps backwards, the reins get pulled. Then there's this unbalance between the two, and then this continues. And before long, your canter transition becomes a 10-step part for the horse, instead of just being into your sitting trot, add your leg aid if you need a half halt at that point, and then away you go into canter. And often what happens, if this is done regularly enough, the horse will start to learn that with you as a rider, you only mean canter after you've finished your 10-step process to get into the canter. So what can that look like? So let's say the rider starts to go into sitting trot, and the horse just speeds up because there's been no clear aid or no clear rein aid to keep the same balance and the same speed. So things get bouncy. Rider uses their leg, horse doesn't travel up into the canter yet, but he speeds up, rider bumps back, now there's a rein pulling. Then the rider uses the leg again, then the rein might get pulled again. Then perhaps the rider gets frustrated, and so now they tap the horse up with the whip. Then they might lean forward to try and get the horse into canter because everything else seems to have failed. And then at some point along the way, enough aids or enough movement from the rider or extra aids will have been applied, and the horse will eventually bundle his way up into canter. And if this, as I say, happens often enough, he will then determine that you as a rider have a 10-step or so process to get into canter, and he will wait till the end of that 10-step process before he actually makes his way into canter. Because remember, whatever you're allowing the horse to do, you are teaching him is correct with you. Improvements that you can make to get a better canter transition, because that's your aim, not get up into the canter and stay there, but to have a nice balanced transition through. Firstly, notice the speed that you're travelling at. Canter requires sitting trot to enable you to use your leg correctly, and your outside leg gets applied for your canter transition because the outside hind leg is the first leg that steps into the canter. However, if your trot is too big, too bouncy, and your horse is a little bit hollow backed, you're going to find the sitting trot really difficult. And once bouncing happens, horse hollows more, life gets more bouncier, balance goes away, and then tempo changes. So slow the trot down so that it is sittable for you. You're going to feel like it's too slow. Remember that horses don't need speed to get up into the canter. They need to be balanced, and they can do this, they can do walk to canter. So speed is not your friend here. Once you get a trot that you can sit to, practice it often. You can improve the hollowness of the horse over time, but not if there's bouncing from you as a rider. So slow your trot down, make it so that it's sittable, and then add this in sections all through your ride. so that when you go towards your sitting trot, your horse doesn't automatically assume that you're going to start your process to add in the canter, and he starts to change what he's doing. Maybe he hollows more, maybe he rushes. So get your sitting trot really, really good at potentially all different various tempos. It could be slower, then you could add it a little bit quicker when you both get it a bit better. And you need to be able to go through the range of tempos up and down, keeping that sitting trot really balanced. Now you'll notice when you start to do your sitting trot, your legs may want to grip on, and that's another thing that you're going to need to work on. So sitting trot with a nice soft hanging leg that feels like it's draped around the horse. It's got to have wet towel quality. So the heaviness and the drapiness of a wet towel has got to be the same way that your legs feel as they are hanging around the horse. If you achieve those two things, then you get your balanced sitting trot and your legs are there ready. They're not gripping, they're not tight, they're there ready to apply your canter aid. So this is us still working towards the almost canter. So your almost canter starts with getting a really good sitting trot at a speed that you are both comfortable in and finding your heavy drapey legs. Then you will go towards adding your canter transition aid, so your leg aid or your half halt and then your leg aid, whichever your horse requires to balance and then listen to your leg aid. And what you will find that happens potentially is as you use your leg aid, he speeds up because that's what he's used to doing. If he speeds up, don't go forward into the canter. Stay with the trot, stay with the sitting trot, because you're teaching him that actually now, when you've got your balanced sitting trot and it's a little bit slower, because slow means you can all think a bit better, you're going to add your leg aid, and what you require him to do now is find his way into canter. Now there are optimum times to use your leg aid, depending upon what his legs are doing, but don't overthink that too much. What you're looking to do now at the moment is get comfortable in the sitting trot, get comfortable with your heavy drapey legs, and get comfortable with applying your leg aid and him not speed up in the trot. You just want him to either stay in balance if he can't offer you the canter right this second, or step into the canter. So give him no other options. And of course, you're going to do this as kindly as possible. So you apply your leg for canter. If he rushes in the trot, don't take that. Ask him to come back again to the right tempo and then ask again. And the more you don't allow what you don't want, the less he'll give it to you, and the more he'll understand that actually now there's no long-winded process to get into canter, and as your leg is applied, he'll do his best to get into canter, and also that you've spent enough time practicing your sitting trot that he doesn't just presume every time you go sitting that canter is coming and he can just start to rush off. So the almost canter breaks down the transition and you practice each section and you don't allow what you don't want. When you have success with this and you do manage to get up into your canter with a nice balanced sitting trot beforehand and a stepping into the canter that you like, you might only be able to maintain this for 1 stride, 2 strides, 3 strides. That is fine. If after those 1, 2, 3 strides the horse starts to rush, they start to become unbalanced, just come back again into the trot, reset your sitting trot and go again. This is the best way up into our lovely canters round the arena in a nice balanced way. You build a canter. Instead of thinking your goal is that you need to get into the canter and you stay there, you build it 1 step at a time, and your horse and you will become so less anxious about getting into the canter. You'll start to enjoy it, and then when your instructor says this word, all of a sudden you've changed your response to this word because you put in the training and because you put in the work. So just to recap, remember that whatever you allow to happen, you are teaching your horse is correct with you. Get a nice sitting trot that is sittable. It could be slower than you're used to, that's fine. Speed is not required to get up into canter. Balance and precision are. Work on your almost canter. Remember, your goal is not to get into canter and stay there at any cost. Your goal is to get up into the canter with each step going towards that being enjoyable, balanced, and with good communication between you and your horse. As usual, guys, if you have any questions or need any help, please feel free to get in touch. I'd love to hear if this has helped you in any way. What do you find difficult about the canter? Let me know. Thanks for watching and we'll catch you next time. Take care, guys. Bye.